My name is Kathy, and I'm 58 years old. Behind my simple appearance lies a truth few people know. I built and sold a tech company for $30 million, but my daughter Amanda never knew about my success. I raised her as a single mum after losing my husband Michael when she was just 3. Despite my efforts to teach her the value of hard work, she grew increasingly materialistic. At her lavish wedding funded by her wealthy in-laws, I sat quietly until the moment she publicly humiliated me. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and subscribe if you want more stories like this. I grew up in a small Midwest town where nothing came easy. My parents worked multiple jobs just to keep food on the table and a roof over our heads. We weren't poor, but every dollar was stretched to its limit. From an early age, I learned that nothing in life comes without effort. This foundation shaped everything I would become. I met Michael during my sophomore year of college. We were both studying computer science when the field was just beginning to explode. Michael was brilliant, passionate, and could see possibilities that others missed. We would stay up all night in the computer lab, talking about how technology would change the world. What began as a study partnership quickly blossomed into love. After graduation, we married in a small ceremony with just our closest friends and family. Neither of us wanted anything extravagant. We were more excited about pooling our savings to start our own tech company. In 1988, we converted our garage into an office, bought 2 clunky computers, and launched what we called Future Solutions. The name sounds cheesy now, but back then it represented everything we dreamed of. 3 years into our marriage, I discovered I was pregnant. Michael was overjoyed. He would talk to my growing belly about binary code and software architecture, as if our unborn child could understand. When Amanda was born, I had never seen Michael so completely in love. He would cradle her tiny body against his chest while continuing to write code with his free hand. We were building 2 dreams simultaneously, our family and our company. Our business was just beginning to find its footing when Michael started experiencing persistent headaches and fatigue. I urged him to see a doctor, thinking it was just exhaustion from the long hours and new parenthood. The diagnosis shattered our world, an aggressive brain tumor with a poor prognosis. Amanda had just turned 3. The next 6 months were a blur of hospital visits, treatments, and trying to maintain some normalcy for Amanda. Michael declined rapidly. In his more lucid moments, he worried most about missing Amanda's future milestones. One evening, as I sat beside his hospital bed while Amanda napped in a chair across the room, he squeezed my hand. "I want to leave something for her wedding day," he whispered. "A message she can hear when she's grown. Will you record it for me?" The next day, I brought our video camera to the hospital. Michael had rallied enough to sit up in bed. Despite his sunken features and the weight he had lost, his eyes still shone with the same love and intelligence that had captured my heart years ago. I set up the camera and pressed record. "Hello, Amanda," he began, his voice weak but determined. "If you're watching this, it's your wedding day, and I'm sorry I couldn't be there to walk you down the aisle, but I want you to know how much I love you, even though we had such little time together." He spoke for nearly 20 minutes, pausing occasionally when emotion or fatigue overwhelmed him. He talked about what truly matters in life: love, integrity, hard work, and kindness. He expressed how proud he was of the woman she would become, and his hope that she would find someone who valued her for her heart and mind, not just her beauty. He spoke about me too, about my strength, and how much he trusted me to raise her well. Michael passed away 2 weeks later. At 33, I became a widow and a single mother to a 3-year-old who couldn't understand why Daddy wasn't coming home. The grief was overwhelming, but I had no time to collapse. I had a daughter to raise and a fledgling company to run. The first year was the hardest. I would put Amanda to bed, then work until 2 or 3 in the morning to keep the business afloat. There were moments when I considered selling the company and finding a stable job with regular hours, but something kept me going. Perhaps it was knowing this company was part of Michael's legacy too. Amanda was a sweet child, curious and bright like her father. She would often ask about him, and I kept his memory alive through stories and photographs. I could see pieces of Michael in her, the way she tilted her head when thinking, her analytical approach to problems, her quick laugh. But there was also a sadness in her that broke my heart, a gap that I could never fully fill. I made a conscious decision about how to raise Amanda. Though the company was slowly growing, I lived modestly. I wanted her to understand the value of money, to know that happiness doesn't come from possessions, but from purpose and relationships. I also kept my promise to Michael, tucking away his wedding message in a safe deposit box, waiting for the day when she would be ready to hear it. By the mid-90s, our little company was gaining traction. We had pivoted from custom software solutions to developing a specialized database management system, just as businesses were beginning to understand the value of their data. The timing was perfect, and suddenly orders were coming in faster than we could fulfill them. I expanded cautiously, hiring talented people who shared our vision. Many were parents like me, appreciating the flexible work environment I created. As the company grew, so did our profits, but I continued to reinvest most of it back into the business. The remainder went into secure investments and Amanda's college fund. Despite our improving financial situation, I maintained our modest lifestyle. We lived in the same 3-bedroom house in a good but not extravagant neighborhood. Amanda had everything she needed: good schools, healthy food books, and activities she enjoyed. But I didn't shower her with the latest gadgets or designer clothes. I wanted her to value things beyond their price tag. When Amanda turned 13, I noticed a shift. The sweet, thoughtful child began transforming into someone I barely recognized. Perhaps it was normal teenage rebellion, but it seemed focused on our lifestyle. The first incident occurred when I picked her up from a new friend's birthday party. "Why do we have to drive this old car?" she complained, slumping in the passenger seat of my reliable but unfashionable sedan. "Jessica's mum drives a Mercedes." "Our car gets us where we need to go safely," I replied. "That's what matters." She rolled her eyes. "You don't understand anything about fitting in." As Amanda progressed through middle school and into high school, these comments became more frequent and cutting. I had enrolled her in a private school, believing it offered better educational opportunities. I could easily afford the tuition with my growing income, but Amanda assumed it was a financial stretch. Instead of appreciating the sacrifice she thought I was making, she became increasingly embarrassed by what she perceived as our financial limitations. "Why can't we live in a bigger house?" she demanded one evening after visiting a classmate's mini mansion. "Is it because you have no ambition? All my friends' parents are successful." The irony stung. That very day, I had closed a deal worth millions. The company now employed over 50 people and had clients across the country, but explaining this would have undermined everything I was trying to teach her. "Success isn't measured by the size of your house, Amanda," I said calmly. "It's measured by the impact you have and the person you become." "That's just what unsuccessful people say," she snapped back. The gap between us widened during her high school years. While I was working 80-hour weeks, growing the company, Amanda assumed I was unambitious. She began spending more time at friends' houses, embarrassed to bring classmates to our ordinary home. When she did have friends over, she would make excuses about our lifestyle. "Mom's really not into material things." I overheard her telling a friend who questioned why we didn't have a pool or home theatre. The way she said it made it sound like a character flaw. By the time Amanda graduated high school, our company valuation had reached nearly $100 million. Industry competitors were constantly approaching with buyout offers, but I declined. I felt responsible for the employees who had helped build the company, many of whom had been with me since the early days. Amanda left for college with barely a backward glance. She had chosen an expensive private university across the country, as far from her boring hometown as possible. I could easily afford the tuition, but Amanda assumed I was stretching financially. When I offered to buy her a practical car for campus, she declined, saying she'd rather save up for something decent herself. Little did she know I had set up a trust fund that would ensure she would never struggle financially in her adult life. I planned to tell her about it after graduation, once she had established her own identity and career path. But college only accelerated Amanda's transformation. Each time she came home for breaks, she seemed more distant, more judgmental of my life choices. She began using phrases like, "when I'm successful," or "unlike you, I plan to make something of myself." Each comment was a small dagger, but I held firm to my conviction that she needed to develop values that went beyond material wealth. During Amanda's junior year of college, our contact dwindled to occasional text messages and brief phone calls. When Parents' Weekend approached, I was surprised to receive an invitation. I flew to the East Coast, excited to reconnect and see her life there. Amanda met me at the airport with a quick, perfunctory hug. As we drove to campus in her roommate's car, she gave me what felt like a rehearsed speech. "So, when you meet my friends, just say you're in technology consulting or something vague. Don't go into details about your small business." And I told everyone, "You're staying at the Marriott, not the budget hotel." "I'm staying at the Marriott," I said, confused. I always chose comfortable but not extravagant accommodations when traveling. "Oh," she seemed surprised. "Well, good. And we're having dinner with some friends tonight at Vincenzo's. It's pretty upscale, so I hope you brought something nice to wear." Throughout the weekend, Amanda introduced me to her friends and professors as the "just my mum," with no elaboration. I watched as other parents proudly shared their professions and accomplishments while I was expected to fade into the background. At the dinner, I listened as Amanda's friends discussed their family vacations to Europe and their parents' professional achievements. Amanda remained silent about her own background, changing the subject whenever it turned toward family. On the final evening of my visit, Amanda mentioned someone named Blake for the first time. "He's taking me to the winter formal," she said, a flush spreading across her cheeks. "His family owns Bradford Banking Group." I recognized the name immediately, a multi-generational wealth management firm that catered to ultra-high net worth clients. My own financial advisors had once suggested their services, which I declined in favor of a more modest firm. Over the next few months, Blake became a constant topic in our limited conversations. Amanda's voice would take on a dreamy quality when she mentioned weekend trips to his family's lake house or the Broadway shows they attended. By spring break, she was spending the holiday with his family in their Aspen home rather than visiting me. Shortly after Amanda's college graduation, she called with excitement vibrating in her voice. "Blake proposed," she exclaimed. "You should see the ring, Mum. It's 5 carats custom designed by a jeweler in Manhattan." "Congratulations," I said, genuinely happy that she had found love. "Tell me about Blake. What makes him special to you?" There was a pause before Amanda launched into a description of his family connections, his job at his father's firm, and the penthouse apartment his parents had purchased for him as a graduation gift. I noticed she said very little about his character, his values, or why she loved him. 2 weeks later, I was invited to meet Blake's parents at their Connecticut estate for an engagement dinner. The property was impressive: manicured gardens, a pool house larger than my entire home, staff discreetly moving about. Blake's parents, Richard and Eleanor Bradford, were polished and poised. They greeted me with practiced warmth that never quite reached their eyes. "Amanda tells us you run some sort of small tech business," Richard mentioned during cocktails, his tone suggesting he was being generous, even acknowledging it. "Yes, a software company," I replied simply. How quaint. I know some people who dabble in tech investments. Perhaps I could introduce you to them for some guidance. His condescension was thinly veiled. Throughout the evening, they spoke about the wedding as if it were a merger between financial empires, except only their empire mattered. They discussed flying in guests from Europe, booking a renowned cathedral, and hosting the reception at an exclusive club where Richard was a fourth-generation member. Amanda sat beside Blake, nodding enthusiastically at every suggestion, occasionally shooting me warning glances to prevent me from commenting. I felt like an outsider witnessing a play where everyone knew their lines except me. As wedding planning began in earnest, it became clear that my role was to be minimal. Blake's parents offered to pay for everything, a gesture presented as generosity, but feeling more like a power move. Every time I suggested contributing, Amanda would shut me down. Mum, we've got it covered. The floral arrangements alone cost more than your monthly mortgage. Just show up and enjoy the day. When I offered to help with the guest list, Amanda sighed. You can invite a few people from home, but keep it limited. The venue is exclusive and we need to maintain a certain standard. I watched as my daughter transformed from an education major with plans to teach into a full-time bride-to-be. She deferred her job search, spending days instead with Eleanor shopping for trousseau items and meeting with wedding vendors. When I expressed concern about her putting her career on hold, she laughed. Blake makes enough for both of us. Besides, I'll be busy with charity boards and the Bradford Family Foundation. And 6 months before the wedding, I received a significant offer for my company from a larger tech firm. After 25 years of building the business, I decided it was time. The deal was structured perfectly. My employees would be retained with excellent packages, and I would receive $30 million. The timing felt right, as if Michael had somehow orchestrated it to coincide with Amanda's new chapter. I accepted the offer, but told no one, not even Amanda. I planned to surprise her after the wedding with a generous gift to start her married life, though I was increasingly concerned about the values she was embracing. I hoped that once the wedding excitement faded, my thoughtful daughter would re-emerge from beneath the veneer of materialism she had adopted. The morning of Amanda's wedding day, I woke up alone in my hotel room. Unlike the other parents who had family and friends surrounding them, I prepared in solitude. I wore a designer dress I had purchased for the occasion, something elegant but not showy. Around my neck hung a simple locket with Michael's picture inside my private connection to him on this milestone day. The wedding venue was breathtaking, a historic estate with sprawling gardens and a view of the ocean. As I arrived, staff scurried about making final adjustments to floral arrangements that cost more than my first car. A string quartet played softly in the garden, where 200 white chairs were arranged in perfect rows. I found Amanda in a luxurious bridal suite surrounded by 5 bridesmaids and a team of stylists. Her wedding dress was a custom creation that, according to the Society magazine, doing a feature on the wedding had cost $20,000. "Mum, you're here," she said, glancing up briefly as a makeup artist applied something to her cheekbones. "Your corsage is over there. The coordinator will show you where to sit." No hug. No moment of mother-daughter connection on this significant day. Just logistics. "You look beautiful," I said, meaning it. Despite everything, my heart swelled seeing my daughter as a bride. "Thanks," she replied, already distracted by a question from her maid of honor about the champagne service. I slipped out, feeling like an intruder. In the main house, I encountered Blake's extended family members who eyed me with curious detachment. One aunt asked which side I was from, seeming surprised when I said I was the mother of the bride. Another uncle asked what my husband did, his interest waning visibly when I explained I was widowed. "And you raised Amanda alone. How impressive," commented Blake's grandmother in a tone suggesting she found it concerning rather than admirable. The ceremony itself was beautiful but felt impersonal, like a society event rather than a family milestone. I sat alone in the front row reserved for immediate family, while the Bradford side overflowed with relatives. As Amanda walked down the aisle alone, having refused my offer to escort her, I clutched my purse containing Michael's wedding video, thinking how different this day might have been had he lived. The officiant spoke of union between families of legacy and tradition, words clearly tailored to honour the Bradford dynasty. Amanda and Blake exchanged vows they had written themselves. Blake's included promises of adventure security and a lifetime of happiness. Amanda's focused on gratitude for bringing her into his world and away from her humble beginnings. At the reception, I discovered I was seated at a table far from the wedding party, not at the family table where the Bradfords and their closest friends were placed. My table companions were distant Bradford relations and a couple of Amanda's former professors. They were polite, but clearly curious about the mother, who seemed so disconnected from this lavish celebration. The first speeches came from Blake's parents. His father spoke at length about family legacy, subtly emphasizing how he was welcoming Amanda into a world of privilege she clearly had not known before. He announced their wedding gift, a fully paid-for house in their neighborhood. The maid of honor, a friend from Amanda's college, gave a speech filled with inside jokes and references to luxury experiences they had shared, many funded by Blake's family. She made a pointed comment about how Amanda had upgraded her life dramatically since meeting Blake, drawing knowing laughter from many guests. I sat quietly maintaining my dignity, despite feeling increasingly isolated. When guests at my table asked about my profession, I gave simple answers that downplayed my success. This wasn't the time or place to correct misconceptions that had been years in the making. As the evening progressed, I wrestled with conflicting emotions. Pride in the beautiful, intelligent daughter I had raised and disappointment in the values she now embraced. I wondered if I had made a mistake in concealing our financial reality from her all these years. Had my lesson in humility backfired completely? Then came the moment that changed everything. The reception was in full swing when the DJ announced it was time for the bride to make her speech. Amanda took the microphone looking radiant in her designer gown. She thanked Blake's parents effusively for the wedding of her dreams and for welcoming her into a world she had only imagined. Then she turned slightly in my direction, and I could see something shift in her expression. What followed felt like watching a stranger wearing my daughter's face. "I should probably acknowledge my mother," she said, gesturing vaguely toward my table. "She did her best raising me on her own." A murmur of polite acknowledgement rippled through the crowd. "Growing up was interesting," Amanda continued, her voice taking on a theatrical quality. "While my friends were vacationing in Europe, I was learning how to stretch $1. She paused as scattered laughter rose from the crowd. My heart began to pound as I realized where this was going. "We were practically poor," Amanda said, pronouncing the word as if it were a rare disease. "Mum never had big dreams or ambitions. She ran her little business from our dining room content with mediocrity, while I dreamed of more." The wealthy crowd chuckled, many nodding as if they understood the burden of having unambitious parents. I sat frozen, each word landing like a physical blow. "I used to be embarrassed bringing friends home to our tiny house," Amanda continued, warming to her theme. "Mum never understood why appearances matter in this world. She was always telling me that character matters more than possessions." Meanwhile, I was wearing second-hand clothes to a private school where everyone else had designer labels. Richard Bradford was nodding approvingly at his new daughter-in-law, clearly appreciating her rejection of my values. Eleanor placed a bejeweled hand over her heart in exaggerated sympathy. "Thank God for Blake and his amazing family," Amanda said, raising her glass toward her in-laws. "They showed me what success really looks like. They rescued me from a life of obscurity and showed me I deserve better than what I came from." The room had grown uncomfortably quiet, now guests sensing they were witnessing something inappropriate, but too polite or too entertained to intervene. Then came the final blow. So here's to finally leaving behind my mother's pathetic failure of a life and joining a family that knows how to succeed, Amanda declared. Sorry, Mum, but some of us aren't content being broke our whole lives. She raised her glass in a mock toast in my direction, and nervous laughter rippled through the room. A few guests shot sympathetic glances my way, while others seemed to be enjoying the spectacle. In that moment, time seemed to slow down. 25 years of sacrifice, of putting Amanda's needs before my own, of trying to instill values that would serve her well in life, all dismissed as failure and mediocrity. The daughter I had raised now stood before me, publicly humiliating me for the very choices I had made for her benefit. I felt a strange calm settle over me. This wasn't really about me at all. This was about Amanda, about what she had become and what she truly believed. And perhaps in some way, it was about my own choices too. I stood up slowly. The room gradually fell silent as people noticed me rising. I walked toward the stage with measured steps, my head held high. Amanda's expression shifted from triumphant to uncertain as I approached. When I reached her, I gently took the microphone from her hand. For a moment, we just looked at each other. I could have sworn I saw a flicker of the little girl I once knew in her eyes, a momentary flash of uncertainty or perhaps shame. Thank you, Amanda, for your unique perspective on our life together. I began, my voice steady. There are just a few things I'd like to clarify for everyone. I turned to face the guests, many of whom were now leaning forward in anticipation of drama. I've never spoken much about my business because I wanted Amanda to develop her own identity, not one based on financial privilege. The little business she referred to is actually Future Solutions Technologies. Last month, I finalized its sale for $30 million. A collective gasp swept through the room. I saw Blake's father's champagne glass freeze halfway to his lips. But that was never what I wanted Amanda to value, I continued. Money comes and goes. Character, that's what lasts. I wanted my daughter to know that her worth isn't measured by her bank account or her address. I glanced at Amanda, whose face had drained of colour. I kept our lifestyle modest, not because we had to, but because I chose to. Perhaps that was a mistake. Perhaps I should have been more transparent, but I still believe, that the most valuable inheritance I could give my daughter wasn't money, but values. The room was completely silent now. Even the servers had paused their activities to listen. There's one more thing, I said, reaching into my purse. Something I've kept for 24 years waiting for this day. I removed a small USB drive and handed it to the confused audio-visual technician. Amanda's father, Michael, recorded this message before he died when she was just 3 years old. His final wish was that she would hear it on her wedding day. As the technician connected the drive to the system, I turned to Amanda. Whatever you think of me or the life we shared, this is a gift from your father. The man who loved you more than anything in this world. I stepped aside as the large screens around the ballroom flickered to life, revealing Michael's gaunt face in his hospital room. The room collectively held its breath. The video quality was poor by today's standards, but Michael's face was clear enough. His hospital gown hung loosely on his thin frame, and the medical equipment surrounded him, but his eyes still held that spark of intelligence and warmth I had fallen in love with. Hello, Amanda. His voice began slightly raspy but strong with purpose. If you're watching this, it's your wedding day, and I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. You're just 3 years old as I record this, sleeping in the chair across the room, completely unaware that our time together is short. Amanda let out an audible gasp. This was the first time she had heard her father's voice in her living memory. Her hand flew to her mouth, tears instantly forming in her eyes. I don't know what you look like now, or what kind of woman you've become, Michael continued. But I imagine you're beautiful and smart and kind, all the things your mother and I hoped you would be. I wish more than anything I could be there today to walk you down the aisle, to dance with you, to shake the hand of the man you've chosen to share your life with. The room was absolutely silent, except for a few muffled sobs, Amanda's and mine among them. Since I can't be there to give you fatherly advice in person, I wanted to leave you with the things I think matter most in life. I've had a lot of time to think about this in the hospital. Michael shifted slightly in the hospital bed, wincing with the effort. First, remember that possessions are just things. I built a business with your mother because we wanted to create something meaningful, not because we wanted to be rich. We measured success by the problems we solved and the people we helped, not by the money we made. I glanced at Amanda, who was transfixed by the image of her father. The Bradford family sat stiffly in their chairs, their expressions a mixture of shock and discomfort. Second, choose people who see you, really see you, for who you are, not what you have or what you can do for them. Real love isn't conditional on status or convenience. Michael paused to take a sip of water, his hand shaking slightly. Third, be grateful for what you have always. I would trade all the success and money in the world for just one more year with you and your mother. Nothing clarifies what matters like knowing your time is limited. Blake reached for Amanda's hand, but she seemed unaware of his presence, focused entirely on the father she had lost so young. And finally, Amanda, be kind to your mother. Michael's voice grew more emotional here. She is the strongest, most principled person I've ever known. She'll have raised you alone, which wasn't what we planned. Know that any success you achieve in life will be largely due to her guidance and love. Amanda was openly crying now, mascara streaming down her face. Several guests had tears in their eyes as well, moved by this message from beyond time. Your mother and I built our company together, equal partners in everything. She's brilliant, though she'll never tell you that herself. She doesn't measure her worth by her achievements or bank account. If she kept the business going after I was gone, know that she did it while also being both mother and father to you. Whatever path she chose, I know it would have been with your best interests at heart. Michael looked directly into the camera, then, as if he could see through the years into this very moment. I hope the person you've become would make both of us proud. I hope you found someone who values substance over style, kindness over status, and I hope you know how deeply, completely, and forever you are loved, by me and by the amazing woman who raised you. Michael smiled, then that crooked smile I remembered so well. Be happy, Amanda. Be authentic. Be the person you were meant to become. That's all any parent ever really wants for their child. The screen faded to black, leaving the reception in stunned silence. I looked at Amanda, who stood motionless, tears streaming down her face. For a moment, the carefully constructed society bride was gone, replaced by a young woman, confronted with the father she had lost and the values she had abandoned. Slowly, I walked to her and gently took back the microphone. Thank you all for coming today to celebrate Amanda and Blake, I said quietly. I think we could all use a moment to reflect. I handed the microphone to the bewildered DJ and walked calmly through the silent crowd toward the exit. No one tried to stop me. As I passed Blake's parents, I nodded politely, acknowledging the shift in the power dynamic that had just occurred. Outside, the evening air felt cool against my skin. I took a deep breath, feeling simultaneously drained and liberated. I had done what I needed to do, not to humiliate Amanda as she had humiliated me, but to honor Michael and the values we had both believed in. As I walked to my car, I could hear the reception slowly resuming behind me, the murmur of conversation gradually increasing. My phone began buzzing in my purse. Amanda Amanda calling most likely, but I wasn't ready to talk yet. We both needed time to process what had happened. I drove to a different hotel than the one where I'd been staying, needing space and anonymity. Once in my new room, I sat on the edge of the bed, emotions washing over me in waves. There was sadness for the relationship with my daughter that might never be the same. There was regret for my own part in this situation. Perhaps I should have been more transparent about our financial reality. But there was also a sense of peace knowing that Michael had been present in his way and that the truth had finally been spoken. My phone continued to buzz with notifications, text messages from a few wedding guests I knew expressing support, several missed calls from Amanda, and surprisingly, a text from Blake. Mrs. Winters, I had no idea about any of this. I'm so sorry about how things unfolded today. I truly love your daughter, and I hope we can start over on better terms. What you did took remarkable courage. I set the phone aside, not ready to respond to anyone yet. Tomorrow would be soon enough to begin picking up the pieces. Tonight was for reflection, for honouring the journey that had brought me to this point, and for remembering Michael, whose wisdom had transcended time to reach our daughter when she needed it most. 3 months passed before I spoke to Amanda again. After the wedding, I decided it was time to do something I had put off for 25 years. Travelling. With the company sold and no daily responsibilities tying me down, I booked a series of trips I had always dreamed of taking. I walked the Great Wall of China, watched the sunrise over Machu Picchu, and sat in quiet contemplation at the Taj Mahal. During my travels, Amanda called and texted regularly. At first, I responded only briefly, needing the distance. Her messages evolved from defensive justifications to tentative apologies, and finally to genuine expressions of remorse. I read them all but maintained my boundary, knowing we both needed time to process what had happened. When I finally returned to the States, I texted Amanda, suggesting we meet for coffee at a neutral location. She responded immediately, agreeing to the time and place. I arrived early, securing a quiet table by the window. When Amanda walked in, I was struck by how different she looked from the polished society bride of 3 months ago. Her hair was simpler, her clothing stylish but understated. She hesitated when she saw me, then approached with visible nervousness. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. "I wasn't sure you would." "You're my daughter," I replied simply. That hasn't changed. An awkward silence stretched between us until Amanda finally spoke again, her voice catching. "I'm so sorry, Mum. What I said at the wedding, it was unforgivable." "Why did you say those things, Amanda? I need to understand." She looked down at her untouched coffee. "I've been asking myself that same question. Part of me wanted to impress Blake's family. Part of me was trying to justify the materialistic values I'd adopted. And I think part of me was angry at you for what I perceived as holding me back all those years. Holding you back by not giving you luxury. I know how ridiculous that sounds now," she admitted. "But I spent years comparing our life to my friends' lives, feeling like we were missing out, feeling embarrassed. When I met Blake's family, it confirmed everything I thought I wanted. Status, wealth, recognition. I convinced myself I deserved that life, that you had somehow deprived me of it. And now," Amanda's eyes filled with tears, "now I realize I was chasing emptiness. These past 3 months with Blake's family have been educational. Once the wedding was over and I wasn't useful for their social calendar anymore, they showed their true colours." "How so?" "They treat me like a project to be fixed. Eleanor constantly corrects my table manners or my knowledge of wine. Richard makes subtle digs about my background. They're not bad people, just different from what I value now." "And what do you value now, Amanda?" She looked directly at me for the first time. "Authenticity, kindness. The things you and Dad tried to teach me all along." I nodded, letting her continue. "Seeing Dad on that video, hearing his voice, it was like he was speaking directly to me across time, seeing exactly who I had become. I didn't like what he would have seen. Your father would have loved you no matter what," I said softly, "just as I do." "Blake and I have been talking a lot," Amanda continued. He was as shocked as everyone else by what happened at the wedding. He's been surprisingly supportive, actually. He says he fell in love with me, not my background, and he doesn't care about the family dynamics. That speaks well of him, I acknowledged. He wants to know more about Dad, about your business, about our real story. And so do I, Mum. I realise I know almost nothing about the company you built or the real reason we lived the way we did. Over the next hour, Amanda and I began the delicate process of rebuilding our relationship. I shared stories about the early days of the company, about Michael's brilliance and our partnership. I explained my philosophy about raising her with values rather than privilege, acknowledging that perhaps I had gone too far in hiding our financial success. I thought I was protecting you from becoming entitled, I explained. I wanted you to develop your own identity based on character rather than wealth. But I can see now that my secrecy might have backfired, making money seem more important rather than less. I wish you had trusted me with the truth, Amanda said, but I understand why you didn't, especially seeing how I turned out anyway. We began meeting regularly after that, usually for dinner once a week. Amanda started asking questions about her father, not just the businessman, but the man. She wanted to know how he laughed, what books he read, what made him angry. I shared everything I could remember, bringing Michael to life for the daughter who had missed knowing him. To my surprise, Amanda revealed that she had started a small business of her own, a curriculum development consultancy, leveraging her education degree. She had declined to work for the Bradford Family Foundation, deciding instead to build something of her own. I'd love your advice sometimes, she said tentatively, if you're willing to share it. I'd be honoured, I told her, meaning it. 6 months after our first coffee meeting, I purchased a new home, not extravagant, but comfortable and reflective of my taste rather than my desire to teach a lesson. Amanda and Blake came for dinner one evening, the first time we had socialised as a family since the wedding. As we sat in my living room after the meal, Amanda took Blake's hand and glanced at me nervously. "We have some news, Mum," she said. "I'm pregnant." Joy washed over me. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." "We've been talking a lot about how we want to raise our child," Blake added. "Actually, Amanda's been challenging many of the assumptions I grew up with." Amanda smiled. "I want our baby to understand value beyond price tags. I want them to know their worth isn't tied to what they own or where they vacation." She paused. "I want to be the kind of parent you tried to be, Mum, even if I was too blind to see it then." I felt tears forming in my eyes. "You're going to be an amazing mother, Amanda." Later, as we stood on the porch saying goodnight, Amanda hugged me tightly. "I wish Dad could be here to see this," she whispered. "He is in his way," I replied, "in the values that found their way back to you, in the parts of him I see in you every day." As I watched them drive away, I felt a complex mix of emotions. There was still sadness for the years of misunderstanding and distance. There was regret for my own missteps in trying to teach values through secrecy. But most of all, there was gratitude for the healing that had begun, and hope for the future, for Amanda, for her child, for our family. Michael and I had built a successful business together, but the true legacy wasn't the $30 million it had generated. It was the values that had guided our decisions, the integrity with which we had lived our lives, and the love that had ultimately found its way back to the centre of our family. Sometimes the most painful moments become the necessary catalysts for growth and understanding. Amanda's public humiliation of me had been devastating, but it had also cleared the way for honesty and reconciliation. The path to authenticity is rarely smooth, but it's always worth the journey. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between speaking your truth and keeping the peace? What would you have done in my situation at the wedding? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, true wealth isn't what's in your bank account. It's the integrity with which you live your life and the love you share with those around you. Thank you for listening to my story.